Good evening, it is Sunday, January 3rd, and you are watching today's Zealand News.
In Oostburg, search dogs were used today to look for Ichelle van der Velden. The 29-year-old woman with her own shop in the centre has been missing for 18 days. Her family has no idea what happened.
If you call her, she answers. If she texts or if you WhatsApp her, then within a few minutes you get something back, or she lets you know where she is or whatever, and now just nothing at all.
Herein lies a crime that took place in the Netherlands, in the small town of Oostburg, a place with just 4,500 residents located in Zeelandic Flanders. However, what made it so shocking is when the police revealed who their prime suspect was, people simply refused to believe it. That is, until irrefutable evidence was presented. And the question remains, how well do you really know someone? Let's take a closer look. On the evening of Monday, December 14th, 2020, 29-year-old Ichelle van der Velde visited her grandmother, and this would be the last time her family would ever see her. The next morning, though, Ichelle did speak to her mother Miranda while she was on her way home back from her sewing studio, named Pins and Needles. Both her and her mother lived in Oostburg. They spoke briefly about the new lockdown announced just the night before. It was the COVID-19 pandemic, and how it might affect their entire business. And this would be the last time her mother ever heard her voice. And that evening, Miranda received a text message from Ichelle, but something didn't feel right. For one thing, Ichelle never texted. She always used WhatsApp, and this was an SMS. And also, the way the message came through, it didn't seem like her at all. The wording felt off, with words her daughter would never normally use. The message claimed that Ichelle was going away for a few days with a friend. Miranda was immediately suspicious. A few days, just before Christmas, with her studio full of work? Why now? Where was she going? And with which friend? That same evening, Miranda began calling Ichelle's closest friends. None of them had any idea where she was, and they also received that same strange SMS. They too had tried contacting her, with no success. Miranda went to her daughter's house. What she found there only made things more alarming. The house was empty, except for Harvey, Ichelle's beloved cat, who had been left without food or water. There was no sign of a packed bag, and all her clothes were still in the closet. Ichelle's brother logged into her Facebook account, hoping for some clues, maybe a new friend, or any indication of travel plans. But just like her home, her online presence showed nothing out of the ordinary. The next day, Miranda went to the police to report her daughter missing. But because Ichelle was an adult and had only been gone for a short time, the police initially refused to take action. The family insisted something was wrong. They decried how she would never send an SMS, how she wouldn't just leave her cat behind without food or water, and nothing was packed. They explained the reality of what they were facing was completely inconsistent with this SMS message. Yet, the police said their hands were tied. Days went by with little to no action from the police, and it wasn't until Christmas that detectives finally launched an official investigation. Ichelle's family didn't wait for the police to start. They began their own investigation. They started with visiting one of Ichelle's closest friends, hoping for some answers, 44-year-old Belgian woman Sandra Helmans. Sandra had recently opened a spiritual shop called the Spiritual Little House Lotus in May 2020, just 2 doors down from Ichelle's sewing studio. The two women are very close. They spoke daily, offering each other support as fellow entrepreneurs. When the family entered the shop, they were met by a familiar scent of sweet incense. The shop was filled with books and paraphernalia related to black magic. Sandra greeted them and appeared just as worried as they were. She claimed to know nothing about Ichelle's whereabouts and expressed deep concern about her disappearance, and this was consistent with all of her other friends. She then offered to help with the search. In the weeks that followed, Sandra was active on social media, sharing every update about Ichelle's case and pleading with the community for help. She also physically joined some of those community-led search efforts in the Oostburg area. And then by December 23rd, the police finally launched a public appeal. They distributed information about Ichelle's missing person status to police stations across the Netherlands and added her to the National Missing Persons Database. Still, there was no real progress until the detectives got involved. Then the next year, January 1st, the family began the new year by taking matters further, going as public as possible across social media, community websites, getting as many eyes on this case as possible. Finally, one of their posts drew national attention, not just from the local community, but across the entire country. With now mounting pressure, the local investigators and police had to show that they were taking this seriously. They finally agreed that nothing looked like she had left voluntarily, and the entire scenario and the suspicious text, as previously mentioned, showed that foul play was probably involved. As the investigation progressed, a shocking revelation came to everyone's attention. Ichelle was involved in a love triangle with her best friend Sandra and her husband Felix. Several of Ichelle's friends confirmed this to the police. According to them, Sandra and Ichelle had grown very close. At some point, they both admitted that they were attracted to men and women. While Ichelle already had experience with women, Sandra expressed a desire to explore that side for herself with Ichelle. Sandra even suggested that her husband Felix be present for this first intimate encounter. This ultimately led to a threesome in late November 2020. But in the weeks that followed, something changed. Felix and Ichelle developed a mutual infatuation, and they wanted to explore their feelings more deeply. Felix told Sandra that he wanted to end the relationship. Police turned their attention to Felix. Felix lived with Sandra and their 6 children in the nearby Zeeland village of Aardenburg. He confirmed that he, too, had received these strange messages from Ichelle around the time she vanished. In fact, on December 14th, the day before Ichelle vanished, at 7 a.m., she was texting Felix sweet, loving messages. According to Felix, they planned to meet at Kanoki that day. And later, they drove to Blankenberg to pick up Felix's kids from daycare. According to Felix, that ended up being our last day together. The next morning, their WhatsApp messages kept flying. Promises, commitments. By 6:29 p.m. that evening, everything changed. Felix received a text, that SMS, but no WhatsApp. The text said, "Hey honey, did you get my message? I'm having problems with WhatsApp. The Wi-Fi's out." Then all of a sudden, a 180-degree U-turn. "It's too much for me. Sorry, I want to break up. It's been good times, but I want my life back. Somewhere else." Felix was stunned. In another message, Ichelle said she was in Breda with a girlfriend. "I don't know when I'll be back." And then, "I'm leaving for Indonesia with a friend in about a month. I need time for myself." Felix tried to make sense of it, confused, hurt, but he respected her wishes. On December 16th, 3:51 p.m., one last message. "I'll be fine, no worries. This might be my last app. I'll get another SIM card soon." And then silence. Felix told investigators that as soon as those texts started and they had no response to whatever he would send, he knew something was wrong. This wasn't Ichelle. He also opened up about Sandra, his partner, the mother of his children. Things with Sandra were tense. They used to be good, but the last few years, hard. Sandra's no easy woman. She's always playing the victim, leaving me to raise the kids alone, doing only what she ever wanted. Just a year before, the family had moved to Aardenburg. Sandra had wanted to open a spiritual shop in the Netherlands. On Tuesday, February 9th, while family and friends were still conducting their own searches almost daily, the investigation team launched several official searches, one at Ichelle's studio, one at Sandra's spiritual shop, and one at the home of Sandra that she shared with her husband and children. While Sandra allowed police to search her store without objection, her store, the spiritual little house Lotus, revealed nothing unusual. But there was one thing that didn't add up. Sandra had always insisted that the last time she saw Ichelle was on Monday, December 14th. However, this contradicted a photo found on her phone, One she had deleted, but which police's digital forensics were able to recover. The photo, taken on Tuesday, December 15th, at precisely 1:01 p.m., showed Ichelle inside Sandra's shop. Specifically, she was entering the code to unlock her phone inside Sandra's kitchen area. Why would Sandra lie about the date? And what an odd photo. Ichelle unlocking her phone in Sandra's kitchen? Could this explain why those SMSs did not seem like they came from Ichelle? Because they didn't. And if Sandra was behind this, why would she take such an incriminating photo in the first place? The contradictions were just too much. Sandra was immediately arrested just as she was about to leave for a vacation with her husband and children. During her arrest, Sandra continued to deny any involvement. She maintained her innocence even as police made another chilling discovery later that same day. Forensic investigators found a bloodstain hidden in the carpet beneath one of the legs of a round table. The Netherlands Forensic Institute confirmed that the blood belonged to Ichelle. Blood was also found on a pair of Sandra's shoes. And that wasn't all. That same day, investigators received a message from Sandra's husband Felix, who was staying at a vacation cottage with their children. According to him, their 13-year-old son had said something very disturbing. A few weeks earlier, the boy recalled that when it was snowing a lot, the mother had asked him to help lift a heavy package from the garage into a Peugeot car. The package was wrapped in garbage bags and, according to the boy, smelled terrible. Police arranged for a formal interview with the boy in a child-friendly forensic studio. During the session, he confirmed everything. He also confirmed that on a separate occasion, his mother had asked him and a friend to help move that same package, this time from her shop into the car. The investigators compared the son's timeline with data from the GPS tracker on Sandra's Peugeot. And had her car made suspicious movements? Had it stopped in unusual or isolated places? It had. The GPS data led investigators to a drainage canal along Kanaalweg, just outside the town of Sluis, near the Belgian border, only a few kilometers from Oostburg. On the morning of February 16th, members of the police's National Underwater Search Team conducted a large-scale search of the area. Eventually, a garbage bag was found in the reeds. Inside were the first remains of Ichelle van de Velde. Over the next few weeks, police conducted multiple additional searches. Eventually, they were able to recover the entire body, which had been dismembered into 9 separate pieces. On February 20th, a pathologist examined the remains. The conclusion: Ichelle had been strangled, and the dismemberment occurred post-mortem. The tool used were likely an electric saw and an axe. Strangely, the forensic timeline suggested that the body parts had been placed in the water more recently than when Ichelle originally disappeared, raising questions about where the remains had been stored in the interim. Later, Ichelle's phone was also recovered under a bridge. The device had been submerged for around 10 months, yet specialists from the Netherlands Forensic Institute were still able to extract usable data from it. In the week following Sandra's arrest, she was interrogated 4 times. During these sessions, she mostly denied the charges and remained silent. It was noted that Sandra is a small, frail woman at 1.6 meters tall. She's almost a head shorter than Ichelle was, and at least 20 kilos lighter. She spoke noticeably slowly, as if she weighed each word at least 10 times before saying it. In some of her police interrogations, she would sit silently for 2 or 3 minutes at a time, so long that you started to wonder, did she even hear the question? Is she even still there? It wasn't until February 16th, when she was finally confronted with the full weight of the evidence against her, that Sandra broke her silence. During the 5th interrogation, she offered a handwritten statement, but the statement was described by investigators as bizarre and completely fabricated. In it, Sandra admitted to the love triangle between them, but she rejected the motive to carry out the crime. She said she was the victim, not the aggressor. Sandra said she felt betrayed by the affair between Ichelle and her husband. She had even saved Ichelle's name in her phone under the contact name Bitch. She claimed that she never wanted to see her husband to be with any other woman, describing herself as possessive, but denied any intent to harm Ichelle. Instead, she said she had actually been trying to protect Ichelle from Felix. Sandra claimed that Felix had a history of manipulation. She told police that she had warned Ichelle that Felix would try to get her pregnant, then use the child as leverage, trapping her in the relationship, just as he had allegedly done to her years earlier. According to Sandra, she was a victim of domestic violence at Felix's hands and was simply trying to help Ichelle from suffering the same fate. Sandra did admit that Ichelle was dead, but insisted she had nothing to do with her death. If anyone really wanted to know what happened, she said, they should ask Felix. She refused to say his name out aloud during the interrogation, but accused him of being behind it all. She claimed that Felix had once sent her to a hardware store in Bruges and had sent her with a disturbing shopping list, including garbage bags, tape, a hand axe, a reciprocating saw, and an electric handsaw. Later, she said, he instructed her to dispose of Ichelle's remains. Investigators thoroughly looked into Felix's possible involvement and found no evidence to support her claims. Yes, Sandra had been to that hardware store. Yes, she had purchased every single item on that list, and even a scented tree air freshener, which could clearly be seen dangling from the car's mirror in the ANPR camera footage. But there was nothing to indicate that Felix had sent her. In fact, he wasn't even in Oostburg on the day of Ichelle's disappearance. He had been working all day in Belgium. Phone records, GPS logs, and his employer's time records confirmed his alibi. Investigators also reviewed his text messages exchanged with Ichelle. They showed a complete picture of a man deeply in love, someone with no apparent motive and no opportunity to commit the crime. But Sandra was relentless, but the statement was rejected as non-credible. Sandra once again withdrew from the interrogation process. She told police that she would not speak again until the investigation was complete. Until then, she remained silent. But this silence wouldn't last. It wasn't until April 14th, 2022, nearly a year and a half after Ichelle's disappearance, that Sandra finally confessed. She admitted that she, and only she, was responsible for Ichelle's death, but she claimed it was an accident. According to Sandra, on the morning of December 15th, 2020, a conversation in the kitchen of her shop escalated into an argument over the developing love triangle. Things turned physical, a shoving match, she said. Ichelle allegedly fell, hitting her head on the edge of the radiator. When she collapsed, bleeding, and was struggling to breathe, Sandra panicked. Instead of calling for help, Sandra claimed she squeezed Ichelle's throat, afraid of losing everything. She moved Ichelle's unconscious body into the fitting room of her shop, covered it with boxes, and burning large amounts of incense to mask any odor. Unbelievably, Ichelle's body was still inside the store when her family visited Sandra days later to ask about her disappearance. Sandra calmly spoke to Ichelle's worried mother and brother, while Ichelle's lifeless body lay just a meter away, behind a curtain. After that visit, Sandra knew she had to get rid of that body. She initially tried to move Ichelle's body in one piece, but was physically unable to do so. So she drove to a hardware store where she purchased an axe and a handsaw. She returned to the shop and dismembered Ichelle's body into 9 parts. She placed each part into garbage bags and drove to a drainage canal where she disposed of them. The remains would lie undiscovered for another month. Sandra then used Ichelle's phone to send misleading text messages to her family and friends, creating the illusion that Ichelle had simply left. She even joined in the search efforts, pretending to be a concerned friend while hiding the truth the entire time. So, what really happened? The investigators were not convinced by Sandra's story. They didn't believe that Ichelle hit her head on a radiator or that her death was accidental. After all, when you panic, you call 112, the emergency phone number. You don't just strangle someone who's in need. Forensics suggested Ichelle was struck in the right eye with a heavy object, rendering her defenseless. Then, Sandra allegedly tied her to a chair with a cloth. This likely happened around 10 a.m. Sometime after that, she strangled her. A witness also came forward to cast serious doubt on Sandra's version of events. The customer had visited Sandra's shop on December 15th, the day of the murder. Sandra told the customer that she had probably killed someone and was going to jail. Then, the customer heard groaning sounds from the back of the shop. Sandra excused herself, went into the back, and returned 1 or 2 minutes later. The groaning had stopped. That suggested that Ichelle was still alive, likely injured, tied up, and hidden somewhere in the store. Sandra may have had made that cold, calculated decision to end her life long after the initial injury. So how did Sandra know Ichelle's phone passcode and send those SMS messages? Well, remember that photo found on Sandra's phone? Before the murder, Sandra had secretly taken a photo of Ichelle as she typed it in. That's how she was able to send those fake text messages that misled everyone, including Felix, Miranda, and Ichelle's closest friends. Justice. In November 2022, the court found Sandra Hellman guilty of murdering her friend Ichelle. The sentence matched the prosecution's demand: 18 years in prison. Sandra was also ordered to pay nearly 200,000 euros in damages to Ichelle's family. The court called Sandra's handling of the remains degrading. Only a lock of hair and Ichelle's right arm were intact enough for the family to say goodbye. The family expressed relief at the verdict. Ichelle's brother, Jeffrey van de Velde, said he was glad the court confirmed what he had known all along. This was murder. Her mother, Miranda Sips, felt torn. Sandra filed a final appeal to the Dutch Supreme Court, but on February 19, 2025, the court ruled that she had no grounds to an appeal. Her sentence was now final. To this day, Sandra insists that Ichelle's death was an accident. She believes she deserves a reduced sentence for manslaughter, not premeditated murder. According to her, everything went black, she once said. To this day, I still wonder why I did that. But the truth is hard to ignore. While Ichelle's family and friends were desperately searching, Sandra was playing the role of a supportive friend. She looked Miranda and Jeffrey in the eyes, offered hugs and sympathy, all while Ichelle's body was hidden just meters away, in the fitting room of her shop. As for the motive, I believe it was pure jealousy. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. And if you watched this far, remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you. Victor out.